Have you ever wondered if the thoughts you think are truly your own? The decisions you make, the words you choose, the silence you keep. How much of it is freedom and how much is programming? You move through your day believing you're in control. You call it preference, instinct, identity. But what if your preferences were planted? What if the ideas you hold most dear were not born in you, but installed? True manipulation doesn't shout. It whispers in your own voice. It doesn't force you to act. It convinces you that acting was your idea all along. It hides in subtle nudges, familiar language, emotional rewards. It teaches you what to fear and who to please. And the scariest part, you don't feel trapped. You feel safe. Because when control looks like comfort, you never think to question the hand pulling the strings. This isn't science fiction. This isn't dystopia. This is your inbox, your feed, your family dinner, your morning thoughts. You were not born with most of your beliefs. You inherited them, internalized them, defended them before you ever chose them. And that's how the system wins. It doesn't need to imprison your body if it can colonize your mind. Control becomes invisible the moment you believe it's your freedom. The greatest manipulators do not raise their voice. They don't argue. They don't demand. They watch, quietly, patiently. They study your fears like a blueprint, your guilt like a lock, your desires like a map. And when they move, it's not to push you. It's to offer you exactly what you already crave. A little safety, a little praise, a little hope, enough to make you step forward on your own. Manipulation doesn't look like coercion. It looks like understanding, like flattery, like someone who gets you, but they don't. Not really. What they see is your hunger. The validation you're still chasing from childhood. The silence you fill with compliance. And once they've found that opening, they don't need to conquer you. You will hand them the keys. You will shape yourself to stay wanted. You will shrink just enough to remain acceptable. And you'll call it loyalty, love, self-sacrifice. You'll justify the ache in your chest as being reasonable. But what's really happening is subtle, surgical. You are being conditioned to betray yourself in increments, to need less, to speak less, to become less, all while thanking them for it. Because when manipulation is done well, it doesn't feel like harm. It feels like home. Manipulators don't enter your life as threats. They arrive as warmth, as charm, as empathy. They tell you you're special. They listen closely, not to understand you, but to inventory you. Every insecurity, every wound, every unhealed ache. And then they shape themselves into your antidote. They mirror your language, your rhythms, your deepest longings, until you believe they're the only one who ever truly saw you. But behind the charm is calculation. Behind the guilt is a leash. Behind the fear is control disguised as care. I'm just trying to help. I thought you were better than this. You've changed. These are not statements. They are spells, cast to confuse your sense of right and wrong, to make you question yourself so deeply that you forget where you end and they begin. The mask isn't just to fool you. It's to make you feel complicit in your own undoing. They don't use chains. They use stories, narratives that frame them as the victim, the savior, the misunderstood one. And slowly, you stop trusting your discomfort. You doubt your instincts. You rewrite your own memories to fit their script. Because when manipulation wears a smile, it's harder to name, harder to leave. harder to admit that what felt like love was something else entirely. You think the manipulator creates your weakness, but the truth is, your vulnerability was built long before they arrived. In the soft, shapeless years of childhood, when love was a reward and safety was conditional. You learned that being good meant being quiet, that being loved meant being useful, and somewhere in between your nervous system wrote a script. Stay small, stay pleasing, stay needed, or risk abandonment. They didn't have to teach you how to fear rejection. That fear was already stitched into your skin. All they had to do was press where it hurt. A delayed response, a disappointed tone, a sudden withdrawal of affection, and just like that, your survival instincts took over. Not because you're weak, but because your body still remembers the cost of disconnection. You don't chase because you're foolish. You chase because your inner child still believes that love must be earned. This is not a flaw. It's programming, the architecture of your early emotional world, still running silently beneath your adult decisions. Manipulators don't create this code. They exploit it. And the moment you see that, everything begins to change. Because when you realize the cage was built from beliefs you never chose, you also realize something else. It can be dismantled. You are taught that goodness is obedience, that saying yes is noble, that pleasing others is the price of belonging. So you became agreeable, accommodating, easy to manage. But no one told you that manipulative people aren't looking for confrontation. They're looking for softness, for the one who will bend first, for the one who would rather break than be seen as difficult. You think your kindness protects you, but it doesn't. Not in a world that preys on politeness. The manipulator does not need to overpower you. They only need to lean on your programming. The belief that being liked is safety, that saying no is selfish, that drawing a boundary is an act of war. They don't overpower the strong, they consume the nice. Not because you're naive, but because you were trained to confuse compliance with compassion. But compassion without clarity becomes a cage, a leash disguised as virtue. And the longer you stay silent to keep the peace, the more you disappear. The truth is, they don't target you because you're weak. They target you because you won't stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because you were taught that being kind is more important than being free. There's a moment, a sharp, irreversible moment, when something clicks. A word, a glance, a silence too loud, and suddenly you see it. The pattern, the pull, the quiet architecture of control that's always been there. Once you notice it, it never looks the same again. Their guilt-laced kindness, the way they shift blame like a magician with cards, the subtle punishments for having needs. You used to call it normal. Now it feels like a script you never agreed to. But clarity is not comfort, it's confrontation. The spell breaks, but the fallout begins. You start questioning your past, your choices, even your identity. Was it all manipulation? Did I ever choose freely? The truth is dizzying. You grieve, not just what they did, but what you tolerated. You grieve the version of you who kept trying to earn peace in a battlefield built on illusions. But this grief is sacred, because it means you're finally seeing clearly. And in that clarity, something powerful awakens. Emotional immunity is not detachment, it's discernment. The ability to spot the hook before you bite. The ability to sit with discomfort without folding into it. To say, I see you, without needing to explain, defend, or fix. This is where your freedom begins, not in escape, but in awareness sharp enough to sever the strings. Not all clarity feels good, but all clarity is good. You've been told that emotional detachment is cold, that to withdraw is to abandon, that silence is a form of cruelty. But what if all of that is part of the manipulation? What if they taught you that feeling everything makes you human, just so they could use your humanity against you? Niccolo Machiavelli never praised cruelty. He praised clarity, the kind of clarity that says, not every war is won by fighting, some are won by not reacting. The manipulator thrives on emotional predictability, your need to explain, your fear of being misunderstood, your compulsion to repair what ya didn't break. But silence confuses them. Stillness disarms them. Detachment starves the system. When you stop playing the game, you don't lose. You end the match. Because what they fear isn't your anger. It's your indifference. The moment you no longer care to respond, to chase, to soothe, you become ungovernable. This isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming strategic. Emotional discipline is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to feel without being puppeteered. You still have love. You still have warmth. But now, you also have control. And in a world that wants to hijack your nervous system, that is your defense plan, not cruelty, not revenge, just the quiet, grounded refusal to be moved by anything that doesn't deserve your energy. What happens when the person pulling your strings also holds your heart? When the smile that soothes you is the same one that silences you? This is the cruelest kind of control, the one wrapped in affection. They don't demand obedience. They earn it with laughter, with memories, with moments that remind you of why you stayed. You tell yourself, they're not all bad, because they're not. But that's what makes it harder to leave. Because part of you still hopes the version you love will return. Manipulation doesn't always look like harm. Sometimes it looks like concern, like, I just want what's best for you, like, you're too sensitive, like, after all I've done for you. And just like that, guilt becomes a leash. You walk on eggshells not because you fear violence, but because you fear their disappointment. You monitor your tone, your timing, your truth, not to keep the peace, but to keep their version of you intact. And this is the quiet tragedy. You think leaving is betrayal, but staying is not betrayal of them, betrayal of yourself. The longer you twist your voice to fit their comfort, the more you forget what your voice sounds like. Love should never feel like negotiation, like shrinkage, like a constant recalibration of your worth. When affection is used to blind you, it's not love, it's a mask. And the moment you recognize it, the spell begins to break. You think power comes from confrontation, from finally saying everything you've rehearsed in your head 1,000 times. But the truth is simpler. You don't need a perfect speech. You don't need their understanding. You don't even need closure. You need one thing only, to stop explaining yourself. Because real boundaries aren't performed. They're enforced, quietly, unapologetically, with a stillness that says, I'm done. The manipulator doesn't fear your anger. They expect it. They know how to redirect it, deflect it, turn it against you. What they can't handle is detachment, indifference, the absence of your emotional labor. When you stop reacting, they lose access. Not because you shouted, but because you no longer cared to play the part. That is the break in the spell, the moment you stop being predictable. Clarity is not rage, it is resolve. The one who walks away without fear does not need to slam doors. Their silence is the final sentence, their absence, the final chapter, and in that silence, something returns to you. Not the version of you that sought approval, but the version that remembers. You never needed to be chosen to choose yourself. What if the freedom you've been chasing wasn't in their apology, but in your release? Not in being understood, but in no longer needing to be. That is the final unhooking, when their stories stop working on you. When your silence is no longer a strategy, but a state of clarity. When the old triggers still echo, but you don't answer the call. You were never weak. You were trained to doubt your instincts, taught that being good meant being agreeable, that love required sacrifice, that peace demanded your silence. But now the training is unraveling. Now the strings are visible, and what you see, you can never unsee. That's what makes awareness terrifying and liberating. There's no going back. You've stepped out of the trance. The mask has slipped. The illusion has cracked. This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of authorship. You're no longer a puppet of guilt, nor a prisoner of praise. You are no longer manageable. You are awake, and awareness, once felt, is irreversible. And remember, the next video picks up where we left off here. Awakening builds upon each video. See you in the next one.